Perfect. Thank you, Joshua. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Administration Station. We have a great and very, very important session for you today. We're going to hear from James Dolan, who is our Director of Financial Operations. He really works specifically with the neuroscience service line and is really a partner to us in the department. And he helps us understand, where we sit from a volume perspective, a revenues perspective, where opportunities may be. We've talked about this over the past few weeks, but, as rising clinicians, doctors, ACPs, it's really important to understand the business and specifically how you get paid. So thank you, James, for joining us today. We're excited to hear from you. I'll also say I'm going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions throughout, please ask them. I'll jot them down and then we'll save some time for a good Q&A with James at the end.
All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you everybody for participating. I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here, and I hope everybody online is doing well also. I'm right now, as Rebecca said, I'm the financial lead for the neurosciences at Northwell Health. And before I go into, the day-to-day of what, my job entails, I think it might be interesting to share just how I got to this particular point in my career. It had a very circuitous route to working within financial operations in healthcare, not as direct as a route as some of my peers. So what I hope that my experiences will illustrate is that your past experiences, your successes and your failures, regardless in what forum they occurred, will help shape you and can really position you to do great things within your career. And you just never know where the future may take you. And throughout these experiences that you may even find out you have talents that you didn't even know that you had. So when I wasn't sure where I would end up professionally when I was younger. When I was 18, the job wasn't going to be center field for the Yankees or be on SNL. I didn't really have an answer for you what I was going to be when I grew up. And, it may sound funny to say, working in financial operations, I was not the strongest math student in high school, which is unusual. So, working in some sort of financial capacity, when I became a grown-up, was not on the radar, let it be in healthcare or any other sort of role. So I go through college, and while being in college, I'm taking all my courses, and I'm hoping that somewhere along the line, it'll hit me like a bolt of lightning of what I want to, what I'm going to be when I grow up. What is going to be the thing that I was put here on earth to do professionally? Like, how am I going to pay the bills and be a grown-up? And as I said before, working in finance was not one of them. So, but eventually, I'm confronted with having to take a math course. And the math course I have to take is statistics, which, as you probably know, is not the easiest of subspecialties within math. So go in to class, not that optimistic, end up fast forward, take my first test, and within that test, I leave the test and I'm feeling okay. I'm not really sure how I feel overall, how I did, but I left the test feeling okay. And then the next time we have class, the teacher is going to return the papers. And the way this professor, chose to return the papers is that he would announce the students based on range. So in this scenario, he says, okay, everybody who got between a 50 and a 70 on the test, I'm going to call your name right now. I'm thinking there's a pretty decent chance I'm in this range. So, and if I end up being a low score in the class, then hey, I'm backed into a corner. That's where I feel I'm gonna rise to the occasion, and I'll do better from here on out through the rest of the semester. Names get called. I'm not one of them. Great. So then the next wave is the students who score between a 70 and an 80. And if I was a betting person, this is where I would have predicted that I would have had, where I would have scored. Teacher calls a bunch of names. I'm not somebody who scored within 70 and 80. So rather than be excited that that maybe I scored above an 80 on this exam, I'm thinking that the teacher more than likely lost my test, that there's just no way I scored above an 80 on this exam. So then teachers call students between an 80 and a 90. Again, I'm still not called. Now my thoughts have gone to, all right, I probably scored less than a 50 and the teacher's just being polite and the professor's just going to tap me on the shoulder on the way out saying like, hey, this is just not for you. You got to figure out what you're going to do with it. You got to figure out a different plan in life. But then the teacher then says, okay, everybody who scored, the rest scored between 90 and above, I'm going to call out their names in ascending order based on test score. And just like, wouldn't you know it, like I ended up getting the highest score in the class. And this was a bit of a high. This was probably the first time in my whole academic career that I scored highest on a math test in the class. So I'm thinking, okay, this is pretty cool. If this was a movie, I wouldn't say this wasn't the pivotal part of my life, but I would say that it made me aware that, okay, this is something I can do. Maybe right before taking this test, I would have dismissed that working anything, quantitative would have been something that just wasn't in the cards. But having taken this test and excelled in this test, and for just some reason, the data just started clicking, planted the seed that, working in this setting is something that I can't write off, which is great. And, the one takeaway from this right now is that if you're struggling in something right now in a class, it's just a matter of time before it could click. And if it could work for me, it could work for anybody. But, more to follow on that. So I go through college, I do pretty well, but I'm still pretty rudderless in what I'm going to do. I haven't gotten that lightning bolt of inspiration. I interned for the district attorney's office. I worked for a congressman during college. And, the idea of going into law seemed like an attractive idea. There is a certain amount of prestige and gravitas that comes with being a lawyer. And I figured, why not? This doesn't seem like the worst when in doubt plan. So my strategy at 22, 23 years old was that I'll go, work for a paralegal in Manhattan. And then, then I'll go to law school. And then I'll just do that for the rest of my life, and then things will be pretty simple. So I go into Manhattan. I work as a paralegal. So I learned two things. One is that I'm not afraid of hard work. I did not mind putting in, countless hours, and which is a good thing to learn. I mean, there's a lot of interesting jobs out there, but it's great to learn that you could work a tremendous amount of hours. And the second thing I learned is that I dislike being a paralegal and I did not want to pursue a career in law. So it's not a bad thing to figure out that that's not what you don't want to do. And I think as you go throughout, this journey called life, finding out what you don't want to do is just as important as finding out what you do want to do. But it's important just to kind of take those experiences and, internalize them and use those perspectives in whatever next job or chapter that you go through in your life, whether it be personal or professional. But at this point, I realized I needed to make a pivot career-wise. And working in this setting, I was already, I moved out of the house, I moved out of my parents' house. I had rent, I had overhead. So I need to make a move that would also be rewarding financially. And so I'm meeting with recruiters, and one recruiter told me, well, you don't want to be a paralegal, but you're kind of in the law game right now. What about going into legal finance? I said, sure. And then they said, do you have experience with Microsoft Excel? And I said, of course, like a liar. I had no experience with Microsoft Excel. But, during the same time in my life, I was taking improvisation classes in New York City, and I was performing improv as well. And what you learn in improv is that sometimes you just have to jump off the cliff and figure it out on the way down. And I was willing to bet on myself. So long story short, I got the job in finance within the law firms, and I just train my butt off, working in Excel. And because anybody, who's familiar with finance and data, is that outside of your brain and intuition, using Microsoft Excel is the most important tool that you can have. And it's a great tool. And if there's one thing I can't emphasize enough, definitely work. If you don't work with Excel or don't have experience with Excel, I highly encourage people to develop and build upon that skill set, because there's a countless amount of jobs and initiatives that where distilling large amounts of data into something digestible and usable will be extremely important and valuable regardless of any function or industry that you work in, and certainly in healthcare. But so now I got the job in working in legal finance, and it's going well. And one of the things that really benefited me well in this role is that I had the opportunity to meet with a lot of great mentors, and I didn't have to seek them out, and they came to me. And that's not always going to be the case, but I was fortunate enough to find a couple professionals that took me under their wing and were willing to learn, to teach me the ropes of working with finance and interacting with people and presenting the data in a way that's meaningful and useful to make informed decisions. And there was probably working within legal industry was a great training ground in terms of getting my rap down. And anybody who knows anything about lawyers is that they are wired to be combative. Maybe not always in the nicest way, and they will try to find the flaw in anything that you present. So, which can make things uncomfortable, and it did. However, I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything, because it did teach me to validate my data obsessively. And anytime you make a mistake, whether it be when you're talking about numbers or valuable information, one misstep can turn into your own personal deposition. So whether you're working in a financial operations capacity, you're working in a clinical capacity, a quality capacity, or an efficiency standpoint, it's really important to know the why, and be prepared that be prepared for any questions. There's somebody will ask a question of somebody will ask a question that'll come out of left field, and you just have to be prepared for it. And I think that being in that type of environment, of lawyers and high dollar amounts was a great training ground for me. However, I wasn't passionate about law, and that's really that's something that was kind of, I was still trying to find that purpose in life where I felt like I was making an impact, but I also enjoyed what I was doing. So what is going to be my next move? So reflexively, I decided to go for my MBA. Much like an undergrad, I don't know why I'm going for the MBA. I just felt like it was a box I needed to check to make myself more marketable. And I'm just hoping that inspiration would find me. And again, it's felt like deja vu. I'm going through the classes, and I still haven't found the class that I want to take. So then I end up coming to a point where I need to take a management course. And this was a moment in my life where actually my procrastination actually played to my advantage. I kept on putting off, I'll register for a class. And time comes, and the class I need are all filled up. So I have to get creative. I start looking around, and I find that there's a healthcare management class. And with finding that healthcare management class, it was designated for people who knew from moment one that they wanted to work within healthcare. However, I thought, what, healthcare management, it seems very specific, it's relatable. I feel that it's a very interesting career. Maybe see if I could get into the class. So I call up. I said, "Can I get into the class?" They said, "Are you in the healthcare program?" I say no. They say, "Too bad." So rather than just sort of just say shrug my shoulders and say on to the next one, I just knew internally that, you know what, I was going to put up a little bit of a fight for it. You know, there's a saying that closed mouths don't get fed. So, you know, I opened my mouth and, you know, I appealed to their nature of just saying that, you know, this seems as like something that I want to do. I feel I'm a little bit of a late bloomer professionally, knowing of, you know, finding out what I want to do. And I feel that, you know, providing these real world experience that I have could not only be, you know, valuable to, you know, I could not only elevate maybe like this program by my own unique perspective, but me sharing my experiences could probably help the peers around me as well. You know, rather than just be somebody that's looking at things through a healthcare lens, I've already had 2 different job types, and, you know, being able to look at things from a different vantage type would only improve the experience for everyone involved. So I was able to get into the program, and it's not dramatic to say, but from that first moment I was in that classroom, I felt like I finally knew what I wanted to wake up in the morning and do professionally as a career. And, you know, just pausing for 1 second, never turn down opportunities, because you just don't know, you know, where it's going to lead you. And that could be in any sort of, you know, a personal relationship, it could be on a professional journey, or it could just be something along the lines of, you know, you have this experience that's going to make you more interesting, you know, around the water cooler or at a happy hour. I mean, so never turn down the opportunity just to try something new. And, you know, in my case, worst case scenario, I would hate the class, but I would still get 3 credits to move forward. But that's not what happened. So you always have to go into every situation with just an open eyes and open mind. And I take this class and I got exposed to so many different functions of the healthcare industry, from, you know, the importance of obviously, you know, patient care, and just the role that all these various roles played. Maybe I was naive in the sense that I knew there were doctors, I knew that there were nurses, I knew there was physician assistants, but there were so many other, you know, other unsung heroes within the medical, you know, community that I wasn't even aware of. So from just a fan standpoint, an appreciation standpoint, I just knew how many different roles people play just to kind of make the machine run in healthcare. And I got to learn that, you know, you can make an impact within the healthcare industry and the healthcare department without being a clinician. You know, when working in the law firm, I didn't feel like I could make that much of an impact without being a lawyer. But within healthcare, in a non-clinical capacity, you could spearhead, drive, you could even create initiatives that can not only drive positive clinical outcomes, but also, you know, you could find new marketplaces to, you know, for your service lines and for your business. You can, you know, there are so many things that you could do. That you can improve patient experience, you can improve efficiencies, you can improve, you know, supply chain initiatives, all these different aspects of healthcare, which were not known to me, you know, prior to taking the course, were now revealing themselves to me. So now I realized, okay, now I have to make another pivot. So making the pivot, you know, financially, you know, maybe at like 25, 26 wasn't as hard, but now I had to figure out, at now 30 years old, how am I I now have like a mortgage. What am I going to do to now to make a career move that I find will be, you know, emotionally rewarding, but also at the same time, it's not going to put me in a financial situation where I can't pursue what I really want to do. And the only way to move forward was really through aggressive networking and hustle. So through this program, this healthcare management program in grad school, I was then able to leverage that into getting an externship for a healthcare system on Long Island. And through that externship, I was essentially working, you know, a second job, but for free. But I was getting paid. I was getting paid in knowledge and experience, which was more valuable than money at that point. Because honestly, if I was to continue doing what I was previously doing, I just would have been burnt out. And so it was a labor of love to really be able to do what I had to do, then do what I had to do from 9 to 5, and then work after hours of, learning all the ins and outs of, population health, which is what I was specifically working on at that time, learning about payer models, how we get reimbursed for the works that we do, and just really just a continuous exposure to all the different types of functions within healthcare. So I do that, and then finally I was able to then leverage that experience coupled with my MBA, and then with my previous work experience working in just in a financial standpoint, to then get my first real grown-up job working in healthcare, which I then did that for a couple of years, and then that now has led me to Northwell Health. So right now I'm very excited to be here at Northwell Health, which I've been at for the last 4 years. And as you guys may or may not know, like, Northwell Health is the largest healthcare system in New York. 23 hospitals and countless ambulatory facilities. And as the financial lead, for the neurosciences, I get to play a part in anything quantitative and financial that impacts those service lines. And Northwell's reach extends far beyond Long Island. They have a presence in in Westchester, Staten Island, Manhattan, the boroughs, and the neurosciences have a presence in each of those regions as well. So the neurology and neurosurgery, they're pillars of the healthcare system at Northwell. Not only because of the work that they do that helps improve the quality of life for so many people, but also because just the revenue that they generate. Within healthcare, just the more complex the procedures are, the more complex the science is, it's going to have a dollar value of reimbursement for that. So among many functions that I have, one is making sure that we get reimbursed for all the great work that our physicians do. And even though healthcare in and of itself is an altruistic endeavor, to leave the world a better place than the way you found it, at the end of the day, you still need to get paid and keep the lights on. With this revenue, without revenue, you can't afford the great doctors. Without revenue, you can't invest in capital, whether that be expanding parts of the hospital, creating a new ambulatory facility to treat a new demographic of patients, or you can't invest in research endeavors. So these are money does matter. I mean there is a saying that money isn't everything, but try running a business without it. And what's interesting about my role and what I enjoy most about it is that there are a lot of people have this this preconceived notion of working in a finance capacity, just kind of crunching numbers, and maybe even have the old accounting machine with the green visor, and you're sitting in the back room. But really, what is fascinating about my role and where I try to elevate value is that I've made it a more forward-facing position. And you don't have to work very hard for it to be a forward-facing position. And for that reason is that when you're talking about numbers, everybody listens. I mean, every job, every role, plays a vital part. But when you're talking about money, where you stand, what you could do with that money, everybody listens. And it's important, and it's important to know where you stand financially, especially within in current days with the climate. But even before that, people want to know where they stand with the revenue. I mean, without revenue, you can't pay bonuses at a very basic level. Whether if you're not making enough money, people don't get bonuses. And not everybody's going to think about the things I mentioned before, like the research endeavors, the capital investments. People want to get paid, but that stuff doesn't happen until you do all the great work that goes into creating a top-notch financial institution and providing patient quality care and getting billed and getting reimbursed for the work that you do. So from a day-to-day standpoint, in my role, like, I provide financial oversight from a looking from a P&L standpoint, looking at the budget. And it's very simple to be able to tell people that, oh, this is how much revenue came in. These were your expenses. These are the variants. And that's important. It's a snapshot in time to tell people what happened. Where you add value in a financial role is you tell people why that happened. So that's when you get to play with the data. That's where Excel becomes extremely valuable. It tells you the story behind what happened. So you'll be able to identify operational efficiencies, any changes in physician behavior. What are the changes in the services that you provide? What are the changes in reimbursement? And that could then spur you to start working in a various bunch of different directions. If a physician is doing the same procedures one year and getting paid, let's say $1,000 for it, and then the next year they're getting paid $800 an hour and nothing's changed, how do you move what's going on? So then you'll be able to look at, okay, the patients have changed, you're getting different, the demographics have changed. How do you then market to those other demographics that maybe you have lost for one reason or another? The healthcare space is an extremely competitive field, so we're competing with a lot of different other health systems like NYU, New York Presbyterian, Long Island. There's also Catholic Health Services. So all these very motivated organizations are all vying for the same patient lives to perform the same number of procedures. And also from from a process standpoint, we'll be looking for other behaviors at different offices or different facilities to make sure, are we submitting our bills in a timely fashion? If we aren't, what is the why? You don't want to get too bogged. You don't want to trip on something that's behind you, but how do you future forward correct something so that those revenues will come in? These are the things that you have to look at when you're trying to make sure that you're keeping the lights on, which, for lack of a better phrase, is making sure that we're getting paid for the work that we're doing, and that we can continue to grow and expand our footprint within Northwell. Northwell and the neurosciences are still aggressively expanding. I mean, when I started here 4 years ago, there was probably about 60 physicians now in aggregate. Now there's over 100, and there's still no signs of slowing down. I mean, we have a presence as far out east on Long Island as you could possibly go, and we're in Westchester, we're in Staten Island, and we're and it's an exciting service line to be a part of. I'm just going to take a pause for 1 second. Rebecca, how are we doing on time?
We're doing great. We have about 30 minutes left, so you can keep going. We can jump into questions, whatever works for you.
All right. Maybe I could answer a couple questions, and I could keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been some great questions about how it is that you've dealt with failure, and really pulling yourself out of that, in that moment. What are some of the kind of tools and techniques that you have for yourself?
That's a great question, and definitely dealing with failure and setbacks is something that you're going to encounter. And really the best advice I could give is that sometimes you have to stop. You got to take a breath. You can get overwhelmed by the situation, and then you have to just you have to focus on what you can control. There could be 1,000 things that you have to do every day, and in my role, there's no list of things that needs to get accomplished, and you're never going to get it all done at once. So really, you have to just do one thing at a time. And maybe it certainly helps to kind of maybe remove yourself from the situation for a few minutes, maybe take a walk, maybe give yourself a little bit of me time, and then you have to, you bite down, and then you attack it, because without challenging yourself, without failure, you're not going to get better. Think about it in terms of sports. Or working out. If you're going to just do the same exercise over and over and over again, you're not going to improve. So you have to embrace those failures. And there's a quote that I really enjoy, is that an expert is somebody that has made a lot of mistakes in a specific field. So you're definitely, without those failures, eventually they're going to be better, they're going to be good experiences. So you're going to learn from them. And that's how you have to, compartmentalize them and view them.
Absolutely. I think that's great. And resiliency is something that's important to all of us, no matter, what career path you go into. It is important to have that grit, and really find your ways to be resilient. A great question of, how have you tried to stand out in competitive environments in the past?
I think is that, that's a great question. One thing is that you want to be the first person to raise your hand. You want to be somebody that people want to associate you with somebody they could count on. And, there's a lot of people that could rest on their laurels, and that's great. I mean, that's their process. But if you want to be somebody who's going to stand out, raise your hand. Be willing to fail. Just be somebody that says, be open to taking on new challenges. That's how you're going to stand out. I've worked in, my job allows me to touch on a variety of different aspects within, revenue cycle, finance, patient experience, quality data. And that's not going to have, a lot of those opportunities wouldn't have happened if I didn't say, sure, I'll do it. Goes back to what I've said before, like just jump off the cliff and then figure it out on your way down. It's not everything is going to be easy. We wish it would be, but it's only going to get easier if you allow yourself to make those mistakes. So I'll tell you what, things that took me 5 hours to do 4 years ago now take me an hour to do, just because through the trial and error and constantly refining the process has put me in that position to do things more efficiently, and not only do them more efficiently but also do them better. And it's that freedom has allowed me to kind of pursue other projects as well. So that's the best way to stand out is to try new things and be open to new experiences.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think just to add to it, I also think really focusing on being an expert, in a few things, and you want to be that person that people know that they can go to, and even if it's something that is really narrow and very niche, if you're almost make yourself irreplaceable, I think there are multiple ways to just really add value, and stand out in competitive places. This is interesting. Someone is asking what KPIs you look at, and it may actually be helpful to even just explain what the term KPI means to this audience.
Okay, no, that's a fantastic question. So KPI, is an abbreviation for key performance indicator. So those are, metrics that we will look at to see how, certain programs or certain physicians and projects, like how they are performing. A great KPI that, so there are a variety of different KPIs. So one is, let's see, like the physician KPIs, like how is their volume? Like how many visits are they seeing? How many procedures are they performing on a monthly basis? What is their reimbursement? What type of, payers is that physician attracting? And what's valuable in looking at those KPIs, you could look at two physicians that have the same practice, the same skill set, but how is one doing, what is one doing that the other is doing? So it's an opportunity to really, have a meeting of the minds and, be collaborative and to help, share best practices amongst various offices and departments. We'll be looking at to see what type of, if there's going to be any type of denials with any payers. That could be instructive in us saying like, okay, what are our billing patterns? Are we doing something that's delaying the payment? Is there something that a particular biller or an office is doing that maybe we just need to tweak a little bit so that they could then just be more efficient in, their job functions? So, the KPI that I look at, the most is the P&L. We want to see how we're doing from a budget and profit standpoint. And that's where, I'll work backwards to say like, okay, this is where we are now. What is the why? And so those are just a number of the KPIs that we'll look at. We'll be looking at, what type of, cases are, having the longest stay in the hospital. That could then, trigger the discussion of, okay, what is our process? Because if we could get those patients out in a more timely manner, that will improve our throughput in the hospital. which will then allow us to improve the access of patient care. And then, as the most important part of my job is to make sure we get paid. And then, the KPIs is not just also limited to where I'm working from, I'm managing the day-to-day or, week to week, the current status of our department. I'm also utilizing KPIs and data for a lot of our perspective and a lot of for our growth initiatives as well. And that's really that's one of the functions of my job that I enjoy the most, is that, as the neurosciences is continuing to expand, there's no shortage of initiatives of wanting to recruit and acquire new physicians, place them in strategically in new locations. And it's my job to really validate the data to see, is the juice worth the squeeze? And, I think a lot of initiatives are great. Logically they make sense, but if it doesn't make money, it's not going to make financial sense. So sometimes I have to be the bearer of bad news. I have to tell people, like, look, it's a great idea, but it's not, as this proposal is currently laid out, either the timing isn't right, or maybe we need to adjust an item or two. And sometimes people who are champions of those ideas may be a little bit excitable. They might feel like I'm shooting them down. And, on the surface, I am. But what's important about the job is, without the data, you're just a person with an opinion. And that is why it's important to always be armed when dealing with, people who are very passionate about these projects. And I'm impressed by their passion. And that passion is what, as much as it gravitates me to the job, sometimes I have to set up those bumpers and guardrails to make sure that we stay on track and that, we are being able to be financially sound in how we move forward. So that will then, lead to a more collaborative discussion of, okay, maybe it's not right now, or maybe we have to do something different to move forward, because, the data has no biases. It's not an emotional document. It's going to tell you how we're doing, what we've been doing. And if you don't like it, we can then have that discussion on what we need to move forward to fulfill these goals and these growth initiatives that we may have. I mean, ultimately, my job is to support, the service line and its leadership and physicians in no particular order. But my job is to make sure that, everybody succeeds. So I look at it as, an all boats rise with the tide approach. If, I do my job well, and I'm transparent with the data, and the physicians and the practices and administration, they could all make informed decisions. Everybody wins. I love, having the opportunity to interface with all these various stakeholders to talk about, how we're doing and what needs to be done, and how we improve, clinically, strategically, and financially. And so that's what makes the job very rewarding, because, all these different functions, we're all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. And, once you master Excel, and I wouldn't say I'm a master, but once you get more proficient in Excel, and you start analyzing these data points, people will start to utilize you to distill these large amounts of data for a variety of a number of initiatives. And that could be very exciting, because then those projects will spur different questions, and then lead you to go into various other directions as well, of just telling you, why happened, what are some operational inefficiencies that could be corrected, how could we streamline more processes, how could we be productive, how can we improve capacity, what will be the downstream revenue effects. And I think one of the things that have really been able to help me in this role, in addition to just being open to new experiences and, leveraging a lot of different departments, is that I didn't always work in healthcare. This is not this might not be the work for everybody, but it certainly worked for me. I was able to deal with various different personalities. I was able to deal with different types of data. So I get to look at things from a different perspective, but also at the same time, I'm constantly learning new things within the healthcare role as well, which is great. And I'm very much impressed by everybody that's participating in this call, by their enthusiasm and excitement and passion for healthcare. And the world's a better place because we got people that have those passions and want to make an impact in healthcare in one capacity or another, whether it be in a clinical or a non-clinical function. And even though I'm not a clinician, I feel like I'm not performing surgeons, but I'm just so impressed with the work and the selflessness that a lot of these people do. The least I could do is just, give it 100%, validate my data obsessively, and, provide everybody with the data and information that they need to be the best versions of themselves from a business standpoint. They don't need any help from the clinical standpoint from me, but as dealing with a motivated group of physicians who want to enhance their practice, enhance their reach, I'm just humbled that I get to play a part with all of that. And just right now, we're dealing, with COVID. So we're still looking to, they've loosened the valve in the area somewhat, but we're still looking to improve our financial standing. And so how do we do that? And it makes my job so much easier when dealing with, enthusiastic administrators and physicians that want to, treat the community and want to continue to practice their passions as well. So I'm constantly working on how do we improve those office capacities? How do we improve the OR access for our physicians? And also at the same time, we've had to be creative with telehealth. That's one positive that has come out of the COVID pandemic is that, telehealth has been something that has been, discussed for years. And we were able to implement it in a matter of weeks at Northwell Health. And, that's part of just the new normal. It's not going to be going away, but it's now we've had to adjust our stance and how do we reach this new patient population, utilizing technology to become, to continue to expand, improve our financial standing, and, stake our claim as the premier health institution in the New York area. So very, very excited on the things that we're working on right now. Budget season is going to be coming up for Northwell, and within what motivates the budget process is really it's kind of multifold. There's going to be like that incremental organic increase year over year as individual physicians grow their practice. You hope that's going to drive increased volume and increased revenues, but also at the same time there's going to be the financial standard that the health system sets. So there's going to be that gap between what you think you could do and what you have to do, and it definitely presents a challenge. But without you need pressure to make a diamond, and year over year that's how we continue to operate, and that's how Northwell has continued to succeed is with that mentality. And you have to look for every opportunity, whether that be through various marketing, business development initiatives, constant refinement of practices throughout various different functions, and and there's really no bad ideas on how to improve revenues and increase productivity. I mean, just in 2020, for example, this was a leap year where it was one additional business day. And as silly as it sounds, we budgeted for revenue that would come in as a result of one additional business day across the health system. I mean, that's where your mind has to go when you're trying to meet the financial standards of your of what the organization sets for you. And without those challenges, I mean, the day would become the days could be very boring. So you're always looking for a new mountain to climb, a new way to improve a process, a new way to improve revenues. And I'm just very humbled and fortunate that I get to be a part of it.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. Maybe we'll switch gears a little bit. Some good questions on just networking tips. And even from your perspective as an executive, how do you want to be approached? Whether it's for mentorship or career advice, any advice that you have to folks just starting out and looking to network?
I would say, bet on yourself. You know what? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, as cliche as that sounds. And I would always reach out to people. I would shoot them an email, connect with them through LinkedIn. That's a great way. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, definitely encourage you to do that to expand your network, because on a long enough timeline, you're going to find out that the world is a lot smaller than you think it is, that you're going to be within three steps of somebody who could maybe set you up with the right career advice, or maybe even point you in the right direction, or let you know about other opportunities. If people want to reach out to me, please feel free to utilize me as a resource, jdolan4@northwell.edu. Please email me. I'm happy to connect and communicate with everyone. But don't be shy. I mean, really, people are a lot more approachable than you think. A lot of people have, it's easy to kind of get caught up in like, oh, that person has such and such title. They wouldn't want to talk to me, or I might be below their level. And you would be surprised at the percentage of people that do want to talk to you. A lot of people do remember what it was like to be fresh out of school and, feel a little rudderless on what they're going to do. So reach out, ask, pick people's brain. You could go through email, it could be water cooler. And even if you're at a happy hour, don't pass up an opportunity just to say, hi, hello, I'd like to get coffee with you one day, when your schedule permits. And it could happen. Worst case scenario, and somebody will just ignore you via email. That's the worst thing that could happen. They may even redirect you to somebody else, but nobody's going to be rude. Like, nobody has ever been rude to me, knock on wood, just reaching out, just wanting to talk to somebody. So, shoot your shot, but definitely don't, you just say hi. Like, people are people.
I completely agree. I think you just have to jump in and do it. And as someone who's not always comfortable with that, you just have to force yourself. And as James said, I really do believe people are genuinely happy to help. So, he just provided his email, reach out. Some of the other folks through Administration Station, and of course through all of these webinars, have been providing their contact information as well. So I would definitely encourage everyone to reach out. And I do think LinkedIn is a really powerful way to do it as well, and just building your network. Great. You've touched on this a little bit, James, but what are some of the data points that you look at to really understand the growth and success of the department, of the hospital, on a daily basis?
I'm looking at comparisons. So I'm looking at various different ways of evaluating the data, and I'm looking for anomalies. So I'll be looking at things year over year. Maybe I'll be going back several years, just to be looking at seeing like what changed. What are some of the what factors may have influenced either growth and when I look at the positives, you don't want to just say like, oh wow, that's awesome, and move on. How can you replicate that and apply those wins to other areas that may not be performing as well? The other thing is you also want to try to find comparative physicians and practices and locations, and just to be able to see what what they're doing and how they're comparing to their peer sites and their peer physicians. And what I like, one of the benefits of working both for neurosurgery and neurology is that I'm able to share best practices. I want to utilize my role to be a change agent and to break down silos. Not saying that, whether one person works in a department, they're only solely, concerned with what's going on, what's, 6 inches in front of their face, but it's just very easy to kind of get caught up in that. I mean, especially when you're thinking like my boss sits right down the roll, and that person's boss sits right down, 2 feet from them. I'm just going to worry about what I have to do. But it's important to kind of step back and look at things globally and to think, okay, what could be done better? What are things that could be done different? I mean, one of the things that I do with my job, and I didn't always do this with my job career-wise, but I learned it because other people did it to me, is they want to find out what is wrong with your report. What are you ripping? Be prepared, as much as I get prepared to rip up, for people to potentially try to rip up my data and challenge me on it. I look at other people's reports, and they'll say, okay, I'm going to talk to this physician, I'm going to talk to this practice, and they're going to say, I'm like, why are you doing, why are you achieving this level when we know that you can be doing that? And I'm prepared for just about every answer that they're going to say. And then I'm armed with my rebuttal. So be prepared to for people to be defensive and just to say, we're doing the best that they can. And my answer to that is they're probably doing the best that they think they could do. And it's easy to get caught up in those habits. I think we're all guilty of, falling into a routine. So, just part of my job is to be an extra set of eyes from a different vantage point. I'm not, stuck in the day-to-day operations and functions of what other people do. So I'm able to look at it with a fresh set of spectacles and, provide and share my 2 cents. So those are the things that I'm going to be looking at. I'm going to be looking at other physicians. I'm going to be looking at other sites. I want to be looking at best practices. And if we did something great one year for one site, how can we replicate that elsewhere so that everybody's on the same high level.
Absolutely. And I think that is the beauty of being part of such a large health system. There are best practices to share. There's probably 15 different or more outpatient neurosurgery locations across Long Island, which is huge, Westchester, Manhattan, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens. So, even from our perspective, we obviously sit at Lenox Hill in Manhattan. It's really helpful when James brings us data that shows us how we're doing comparatively to some of our other sites. And it's not competition. We're all within the same health system and we all want each other to succeed. But, if I can see what a practice out east is doing, I can reach out to them and say, hey, you guys have a really great strategy out there. How can we learn from you? And vice versa. So there's, a lot of synergies and benefits to James bringing us comparative data across the board. Okay, there's been some good questions. Obviously you've mentioned Excel is, one of the systems that you use day in and day out. I am an avid Excel user as well. I can't stress how important it is. Are there any other systems you would recommend? Tableau is one that, I think, I saw some people mentioning in the chat, but, any other systems that you think people should really spend some time in preparing for their careers?
I mean, Tableau is a great example of, of a report that, a database that can be used as you go through your career. I mean, depending on, what health system you go to, there's going to be a lot of different repositories that are going to be specialized for, a number of different functions and, reporting data points. But I think if, you utilize Excel and you become proficient at that, a lot of these databases are really, templated after Microsoft Excel. So if you're able to kind of know how Microsoft Excel works in and out, it's a very transferable skill to a lot of number of other, databases that you're going to get exposed to. So, I mean, data is data, and how you were able to get all this large amounts of information and, reduce it into something that is digestible and can be easily be interpreted is what's going to help you, when working with numbers and data points and information. What I like, there's a saying that people don't want to hear about the pain, they just want to see the baby. And that's what I do. That's what I think about when I'm preparing my reports. I could, there's limitless information that I could provide, but I want to put together a report that anybody off the block, they could pick it up, my report, and they know what it means. I understand that, who I'm interfacing with and who, the value of their time. So I want to be able to give them give them a report, let them know what they're doing, and so they can say, okay, got it. And if they've got questions, they'll ask them right then and there, or they'll get back to me sometimes. But it's important that people can know, they can lift up a report and know what you're doing right then and there. Utilizing Excel is the most important tool, for setting that foundation. And just from a preliminary level, utilizing, pivot tables, VLOOKUPs, and then just a number of other formulas that'll be able to become more efficient. It's a great tool to have. I mean, as you start to kind of just develop, your skill set and, get ready for the professional world, another piece of advice is, surround yourself with people who are so good at what they do that it makes you angry. And what I mean by that is that, you're like, how is this person so good at what they do? Like, how are they so comfortable? How do they make this so easy? And that's going to be like the carrot that's going to motivate you and drive you to become, the best version of yourself professionally. Because, yeah, there's the occasional one or two, prodigies that are you just know they are put here on this earth to do a particular function. But the vast majority of the people, including myself, you have to work at it. So surround yourself by people that are going to make you realize your own, shortcomings, and so you know what to work on. I think that's something that you should always do, regardless of wherever you are in your career. You don't want to be the smartest person at the table. And if you are the smartest person at the table, just never pass up an opportunity to keep your mouth shut, and then just try to find a new table.
I think that is fantastic advice. And I do think a lot of people are threatened by others that are successful and smart around them, but you're only as good as the company you keep. And so I completely agree with that, of surround yourself by experts, surround yourself by people you can learn from, hire people you can learn from. I think the best thing you can do is hire someone that's smarter than you, and then help them succeed. So that's really fantastic advice. And a bunch of questions, and James hit it on the head. I think no matter where you sit, whether it's in finance or if you're a clinician that plans to do research, you will be working with large data sets. So, the questions were pivot tables definitely are really important, and you can watch endless YouTube videos on them. And James also mentioned VLOOKUP formulas. Excel has endless functionality with formulas as well that you can, really teach yourself. So I definitely would encourage anyone interested, again, in going to administrative field, or if you think you're going to be doing some research in healthcare, and understanding population management as well, definitely spend some time with those tools. James, any closing remarks? We have about 2 minutes left.
I'm just, very much, again, I just want to thank everybody, for joining and engaging in this Brain Turns seminar. It's, I'm very much, humbled to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So thank you to Rebecca, Dr. Langer, and everybody that's involved that was able to kind of create this program. Just if it's just one thing that I've learned in life and I've touched on throughout the presentation, is that learning is going to be an ongoing journey. You just never know what's going to happen. So just don't be afraid to be uncomfortable, because whether that be in a social situation, get a hobby, professionally, put yourself in a position where where you're going to learn and thrive. And because even if it might not seem like it's going to be applicable in the immediate, just store that information, bank those experiences, and then you're going to, it's going to pay dividends down the road. On a long enough timeline, every experience you have is, you're going to be able to use it in one fashion or another.
Awesome. James, thank you so much. We're thrilled to have you. This is fantastic.